Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the Kentucky Book Fair, Kentucky Historical Society jointly sponsored, we'll call it Symposium for lack of a better word, program today on Appalachian writing. Everything old is new again. I'd like to introduce our moderator, Karen Salyer McElmurray. Did I mangle it there? Ms. McElmurray is with us today at the book fair with her new book, Walk Till the Dogs Get Mean, Meditations on the Forbidden from Contemporary Appalachia, which features essays from today's finest established and emerging writers with roots in Appalachia. She's also the author of Surrendered Child, which is about the relinquishment of a son to adoption in the state of Kentucky in 1973. She's also the author of Motel of the Stars. She's currently finishing her 8th draft of a novel entitled Finishing Inez, and also working on a collection of lyric essays called The Land Between. Ms. McElmurray is teaching full-time writing at Gettysburg College and lives part-time on a farm outside of the Gettysburg area. Thank you very much. Please welcome Ms. McElmurray.
Well, hello, everybody. Oh, I'm really excited to be here today. I always start like doing a reading or a class. I'm very deep, personal in what I say. I was just thinking about how last night I was in the airport until, I guess, 12:30, something like that, and around 10 we were changing planes, and it was at that point that I heard about all this stuff in Paris. I've been following the events, and I just have ever since felt so discombobulated, and then here you are at a writing festival, and that is there in my psyche. So I'm just particularly glad to be here because of that. It makes me feel really grounded. It makes me feel just so happy to be here to have a chance to introduce these three wonderful, wonderful writers. Chris Scotton, David Joy, and Robert Gipe. And I was hoping that they would each read for us a little bit. I'll introduce, I'm going to just in alphabetical order. Is that okay for you guys? And I'd like to hear you each read a little bit. I guess that you've read the description of this panel, which promises to be, let me find that again. Appalachian writing, everything old is new again. That's how I kind of feel today doing this panel. I felt wiped out and old, and this is renewing me with the events of the world going on. So our first reader today will be, if we do the alphabetical thing, Chris Scotton. He is the author of the best-selling debut novel, The Secret Wisdom of the Earth, selected as the #1 indie next pick by the American Booksellers Association. Novel also chosen as an Amazon featured debut, an Amazon Best Book of the Month, an editor's pick by the Chicago Tribune, an editor's choice by the New York Times, and a new and noteworthy book by USA Today. The novel, called a powerful epic of people and place, loss and love, reconciliation and redemption by Kirkus Reviews, is set in a small town deep in the Appalachian coalfields. Scotton has been a carpenter, an amusement park ride operator, a kite flyer, a bouncer, a tennis racket stringer, and CEO of a few technology companies. So, Chris, will you read some for us?
Sure. But by far the best job I've had is that kite flying job. If you can ever get paid for flying kites, I highly recommend it. It was.
What was that?
So I was working at the beach in Maryland, and there was a kite store, and they needed someone to fly the kites on the beach to get all the people down into the store, and they hired me and were paying me at that point $4 an hour to fly kites, which was a fortune back then. That was a long time ago. But these were big 20-foot kites that required a strong college kid to do it.
So if someone says you go fly a kite, then it can hold you?
I would require them to pay me. So anyway, so this is my debut novel. In fact, we're all debut novelists, so this could easily be a debut novelist panel as well. It's called The Secret Wisdom of the Earth. Has anyone had a chance to read it yet? Oh, there's one right there. There you go. So It got great reviews when it first came out. Yeah, and like all first-time writers, I'm sure you guys did the same thing. You know, I went online to see what are the reviewers saying about it. You know, are they saying good things or bad things? Because a bad review to any writer is like a spear in the heart. You know, but for a debut writer, you know, it's even worse. So I went online and there was all kinds of good stuff. You know, New York Times. David Woodrell gave it a great review in New York Times. He's one of my favorite writers. But there was one review that a woman posted online, and she said, and it was kind of probably the most poignant review I could have imagined. She said, "I love the characters, and I love the story, and the relationship between Pops and Kevin, the narrator, is just so beautiful. But I don't understand why they put bacon on the cover." And like I said, "What, bacon on the cover? What are you talking about?" I look, I said, "Oh my gosh, it is bacon." And now I can't look at the cover without seeing the bacon, you know. And it's true. If you Google, you know, "Bacon, Secret Wisdom of the Earth," it'll come up. But
Bacon at various stages.
I don't think that's bacon, but it's definitely bacon down there. It's even like it's not scratch and sniff, but anyway. Anyway, so the story it's narrated by a 40-year-old man who's looking back on the seminal summer of his 14th year, and he lives in Indiana with his parents, and he accidentally causes the death of his younger brother in this horrific accident at home. Absolutely, it's just this awful accident, and he and his mom witnesses it. It happens on their front yard. And so he and his mom go to live with her father, his grandfather, in an old coal mining town in eastern Kentucky called Megger, Kentucky. And it's there that Kevin, the narrator, falls in with this half-wild kid from a hollow named Buzzy Fink. And Buzzy is kind of this amalgamation of every literary ne'er-do-well, Huck Finn, Tom Sawyer, and Artful Dodger, all wrapped up into one. And he's the coolest kid in town, and Kevin's very much of a nerd like I was growing up. And Buzzy takes him under his wing and helps him kind of begin to heal. And the town itself is beset by this mountaintop removal operation that's just destroying the natural beauty of the place. And there's one man in town who is opposing the mountaintop removal, a guy named Paul Pierce. There's one catch. He happens to be gay. And everyone in town knows that he's gay. He and his partner are politely known as bachelor gentlemen in town. But it's the town's secret. And at a town meeting, when he tries to rally the citizens against the coal mining, he's outed. And then a week later, he is beaten to death. And the beating is witnessed by Buzzy Fink, the narrator's friend. And so Buzzy knows who did it, but he can't say for his own reasons. And that hate crime propels the rest of the novel to a thrilling conclusion. My reader, thrilling conclusion. So what I'd like to read is just a quick chapter, if I could. This one is. Pops, the grandfather, is a large animal veterinarian. And the way that the reader is introduced to the characters in the novel, Pops takes Kevin on calls around the county, meeting all the various characters and so forth. So in this particular passage, we meet Pops, obviously, Kevin, and Grubby Mitchell, who is the owner of the farm right below the mountaintop removal operation. So this one is called Bull Testicles. Now, as many of you know from your bull castration experience, castrating bulls is generally best done when they're about 2 weeks old. These are yearling bulls that they have to castrate and dehorn, which is a chancy business, to say the least. So, I followed Pops out to the shed where he kept his veterinary supplies. The outside of the structure was weathered gray wood, topped with a corrugated tin ceiling and a weather vane stuck on west. Inside was immaculate and organized, with row upon row of polished wooden drawers, brass knobbed and wearing unrecognizable names: Amitraz, Bacitracin, Clindamycin, Dexamethasone. The ceiling was stocked with gleaming metal veterinary accessories, several sizes of forceps, polished spreader bars, clippers, clamps, shears, syringe guns, all dangling from overhead racks the way a chef hangs pots and pans. He loaded his satchel with several accessories, latched it, and locked the shed. In the kitchen, he poured us each another cup of coffee in travel mugs. Mine read, bacitracin for ulcerative posthitis, Merck Animal Health. What's ulcerative posthitis? I asked. I figured any additional knowledge would serve me well as junior veterinarian. Pops laughed. Something you don't want to get. What is it? Pizzle rot. Pizzle rot? It's a nasty fungus that affects ram penises. A ram with pizzle rot is an unhappy ram, let me tell you. For that matter, a man with pizzle rot is pretty unhappy too. We can catch pizzle rot. We can, but not from sheep. And I want to apologize in advance for my southern accent. I'm from the north, so, you know. He put the satchel in the back of his truck, and I slid into the passenger side bench seat. He reversed out the Chiseled, took a right on Watford. We headed through the west side of town to Route 17, passing storefronts abandoned like October corn stalks, X's taped across windows, a deserted gas station on the corner, naked islands stripped of pump hardware, weeds breeding in the pavement fissures, a still open liquor store. We came to the intersection of Route 17 and 32. A 4-story structure sat abandoned on a cut-in in the corner. Small windows frosted over, some boarded, some broken. 10-foot chain link with concertina wire on top. What's this old building? This used to be the plant for Lux Industries, a chemical company that employed everyone in town who wasn't a miner. They made urinal mints, splash guards, and other things for public toilets. What are urinal mints? You know, those little round perfumey things in the bottom of urinals? Why do they call them mints? They don't taste like mint, do they? Well, Kevin, I never actually tried one, but I imagine they don't taste like mint. Anyway, the Megger plant was one of the leading producers of urinal mints in the entire country. Just about every urinal mint east of Mississippi and south of Maryland came from Megger. I thought about all those men holding their penises and staring down at a urinal mint from Megger, tearing the rinds off cigarette butts with their piss streams. Lux Industries, Megger, Kentucky, emblazoned on the splash guard. It made me proud. What happened to it? They moved production to Mexico and closed it the same year all the mines shut. He looked over at me. It wasn't a good year for us. We took a right on 17 and followed the edge of the valley floor. The Mitchell farm occupied a prime funnel-shaped valley between 2 rolling hills of Rag Mountain that eased out of her like inviting legs. Next to Rag was the flat gray wound from the strip mine operation running across 3 stubbed hills and hollows. We dusted up the dirt road, past a company of steer enjoying a morning cud, to the barns and pens and the slight incline of the lane which signaled the business end of the farm. Grubby Mitchell was standing with Paetzel Meadows in the barn door, examining the carburetor they had just pulled from his deep red Massey Ferguson tractor when we rattled up to the barnyard. "Morning, Grub, Paetzel," Pop said as he eased himself down from the worn-out front seat and reached into the back for his brown veterinary satchel. "Morning," they returned, staying fixed on the suspect carburetor. I exited on the other side and followed Pops close behind. "Grubby, this is my grandson, Kevin." They looked up from the engine piece. "Heard you was living in town now, pleased," Grubby said and nodded. Paetzel smiled. "Good to see you again, son." "Engine's been leaning out, so I thought I'd have paid up to pull the carb and see." "Well, that's sensible, Grub. While you're doing that, we'll have a look at those bulls. Where are they?" "Pen behind the pen barn." We walked to the back of the pen barn, which held 2 petulant bulls with proud horns and swaying testicles, who looked as if they wouldn't relinquish them without a discussion. "How are we going to do these bulls without getting kicked?" "Getting kicked is the last thing we should worry about. Look at those horns." I leaned on the fence. Pops opened the double doors of a large barn and began assembling a run of portable fencing from the pen gate to the barn. "Pops, really, how are we going to do this?" I worried. "Well, Kevin, I don't rightly know. I've never done it before." "You've never done this before?" "Nope, that's why I asked you to come." "Well, I've never done this before either. You know that." "Well, we're just going to have to learn as we go, I guess. Do you want to hold the bull or do the cutting?" I thought about my options for a moment. I guess I'll hold the bull. Anyway, so that's it, and they castrate the bull successfully, and then leave. So I'll hand it off to one of these guys. So.
I probably should save that question till later, but have you ever, in fact, castrated a bull?
I've never castrated a bull. I've witnessed bulls being castrated. They won't let me get near the business end of a bull.
I was just curious. I don't know. Okay, our second reader today is David Joy. His stories and creative nonfiction, I want to ask about that balance here in a bit, have appeared in Draft Horse Literary Journal, Smoky Mountain Living, Wilderness House Literary Review, Pisgah Review, and Flycatcher. And he's the author of the memoir Growing Gills, A Fly Fisherman's Journey. Lives in Webster, North Carolina. Where All Light Tends to Go is his first novel. And I just had to read these two excerpts from beautiful reviews. New York Times Book Review says this book isn't your ordinary coming-of-age novel, but with his bone-cutting insights into these men and the region that bred them, Joy makes it an extraordinarily intimate experience. Daniel Woodrell says that the work is lyrical, propulsive, I really like that word, propulsive, dark and compelling. Joy knows well the grit and gravel of his world, the soul and blemishes of the place.
Can I just do it here? Okay.
No, you must stand.
I think a cousin of mine had that fizzle rot that he's talking about one time. They gave him penicillin. But Karen had asked if I think one of the things she wanted to talk about with the Paris event yesterday was just kind of the idea of violence. And this is a section I read a lot anyways, but this is the initial image that I had for this book is the scene that I'm about to read. It takes place like 200 pages in. But this is the very first thing that I ever wrote in regards to this book, and it was the first thing that I saw. And I was standing with a friend of mine at his hog lot, and he traps wild pigs, and then he raises them up after that, put fat on them. But there's this picture of his little boy, and he's, I don't know, 6, 7 years old. And he killed this pig that was probably twice the size of him with a knife. And he's standing there, and he's smiling, and he's got blood all over him. And he's got this knife, and there's this pig behind him that's twice his size. And I just remember that image haunted me for a long time. And I think one of the things was I was wondering if he recognized what he was capable of. And I don't necessarily know that he did or that he ever thought about anything like that. But what went through my mind was that the minute you recognize that you're capable of killing something that size, it has major implications on what you can do. And so that's where this scene came from. It says, I remember the first time I knew I was capable of killing, and I mean really killing, not just rabbits and chickens and such, was when Daddy took me way back in Whiteside Cove after hogs. I'd never gone with him before, and until then all of my hunting had been distant, nothing hands-on, just 22 rimfire gray squirrels and cottontails. The Walkers had a hog bayed in a dried creek bed where smoothed river rocks lay like dusty cobble. Stick him under his arm, Jacob, Daddy yelled over squeals and snarls. I'd never heard anything like that sound, but when Daddy unsheathed the knife and the cutting edge he'd sharpened that morning on whetstone caught sunlight, I knew what I had to do. He handed me the knife, and I clenched the leather-wound handle as tight as I could, my fist squeezed into a knot, and fought my way through the hounds till I could see the blacks of the pig's eyes. Eyes wide, chomping cutters and screaming, the pig seemed fueled by some blend of fear and rage, and I felt tears dam up in my eyes as I pulled the butt end of the knife into my stomach and thrust hard until the steel bolster rested flush against coarse hair and tight skin. All 7 inches of blade was in him now, and the squealing grew louder, and I pulled out and stuck him again and again until the sound was wet, fell silent, and blood pooled onto dried oak leaves. I wiped the tears across my face with my t-shirt sleeve as if I was swiping snot from my nose so his Daddy wouldn't see, and the hounds were still clenching firm to the hog when I watched the last bit of light go out of his eyes. The muscles tightened up one last time, then fell lifeless and limp. You done good, Daddy said as he squeezed my shoulder. That was one of those few times he'd been proud, but I could hardly hear him or feel his touch. My ears rang, my body numbed. The high-pitched drone that wailed in my ears went away by nightfall, but it was that numbness that stayed with me. It was the fact that the tingling never left that let me know from then on that when the time came, I could do it again.
That was sort of spontaneous, the whoa. Our third excerpt, sorry, I got too many papers here. Does anybody besides me teach in this room, teaching? Do you ever feel like you're beset by papers at every moment of your day? Papers, papers. Our third reader today, and then we'll have an opportunity to talk a little bit about these excerpts, talk a little bit about their work in general, and just ask some questions, I hope, about the writing life. Our third reader is Robert Gipe. His first novel, Trampoline, an illustrated novel, was published by Ohio University Press in 2015. The first chapters were serialized on Still, the journal. The Knoxville News Sentinel called Trampoline a new American masterpiece, while Library Journal called it deeply lovable. The Washington Independent Review of Books called Trampoline jagged, dark, and honest. He's published short fiction in Appalachian Heritage, Anniversary Issue 2013, Pine Mountain Sand and Gravel, Hidden City Quarterly, the Pikeville Review. Since 1997, he's been director of the Appalachian program at Southeast Kentucky Community and Technical College. His primary responsibilities, he says, are in connecting college and community, local culture and the arts, sustainable community development, and, of course, teaching. Robert.